Welcome everyone to International Racing Team's round 4 of the SIN R1 Championship, the penultimate run, and we are in West Germany at the Nürburgring GP. Now, when we say the name Nürburgring, obviously everyone thinks about the enormous, monstrous 20-25 kilometer Nordschleife stretch, but today's star is the GP track, conceived in the 80s and being in its today's final form in the early 2000s. This racing complex really just was a home to every sort of motorsport event, from sports bike to GP, Formula One, even rallycross. And today's machinery, as always, will be the lovely SIN R1 GT4, a Bulgarian car brand, making this pretty beautiful and aggressive looking little car with a 6.2-liter V8 Chevy Source engine. I'm absolutely excited to see what our guys will be able to put on the track with this car. This track is very ominous, especially because of its legendary turn 1. For both in real life and sim racers, you really need to be mindful of where you put your car, and this can be said about several major points of the track. So all in all, I'm very curious to see what our drivers will cook up today. And while we are waiting for the qualifying, let's also take a quick look at the current championship standings. As it stands, Cassoni leads with a sort of comfortable gap, yet we could say it's just mathematical, because theoretically you can obtain 50 points per round. That's getting a win in both races. But so far Cassoni has been very confident, basically taking as many wins as he can. The runner-ups, real chances is only if Cassoni makes major mistakes, even DNFs. That's the only way they can ditch this championship out of his hand. Behind him is Spon and Olehar, with just 3 points separating the two guys. Marvelous racing we saw from each of them in all rounds so far. It's only out of the top 4, it's only Olehar who wasn't being able to score a win so far in the championship. I was curious to see whether he can break that streak of his now. Behind them is Bojaki, also, who don't be fooled by that. Sorry, one moment. Excuse me. So as we are looking at the championship, I was at Bujaki, who also put on very decent performances so far. Don't be fooled by that. He has only 70 points. That's because of that he did not attend all the races so far. So basically, as we are waiting for the qualifying to start, a little rundown of the race format and the championship format. It's a fixed setup championship. Basically, everyone can only adjust things like ABS, TC, and maybe brake bias with the cars. And it's a 10-minute qualifying session with two 20-minute races, with the second race being a reverse grid of the top 10 positions of the first race. And it's only a matter of seconds until we will get on track for the qualifying. guys are already out on the track, forming a little line, being mindful of the gaps. Cassoni is ready, doing some supposedly tactics here by stopping on the grass on his outlap. I'll be very curious to see what sort of performances our dudes will be able to pull at this qualifying session. In the practice sessions, Cassoni put up the best time with a 2:5.89, but behind him, pretty closely, was Bajaki with a 2:6.05, and Olanhar too with a 2:6.08. So this is perhaps the closest I have seen in practice results, which brings a pretty interesting highlight to this qualifying session. Theoretically, our guys are very much on par with each other when we are looking at raw hot lap pace. As it always is with this championship, this 10-minute qualifying session is just as much a sprint session as the 20-minute races are. You really don't have that much time to mess around. 10 minutes, it's usually, especially on a track where one fast lap takes 2 minutes, that's 5 laps left, and that's not counting your out laps and any mistakes you make. So, as we pointed out a lot of times now in this championship, you really need to be mindful of your laps. This is what a good qualifying session is all about, finding the balance of pushing 100, maybe 110%. Ooh, a little working there. Not so fast, guys, it's not the race yet. So finding that great balance between pushing your car to the maximum and not putting one single mistake into that one lap. You already saw a little clash here from our guys. The first hot lap. Spawn was very generous at letting Olanhar go, basically sacrificing. Oh, if it's just his hot lap, you didn't actually sacrifice anything. Although they were running in the last corner, so I think this is supposed to be the first fast lap of Spawn 2. But it can always be pretty chaotic, no matter how many cars you have in the grid. If they are closing qualifying, you really need to decide fast whether you think you can just leave the car behind you. Nope, we'll stay by Spoon here. His first lap, no matter, still has 6 minutes. So as I said, you really have to be mindful whether you want to let the car behind you go by, decide very fast that they will be quicker than you, so you don't hold up each other, because that's detrimental for both of your qualifying sessions. So we should approach the end of everyone's first lap now. As I'm watching the timings, actually, you can see that the Bajaki is supposedly set a time with a 2:6.3. Pretty solid, but I don't think that's the guy's fastest. Oh, excuse me, I think he actually did an off-track or made a mistake, because that lap did not count in the timing. So far he's Olanhar leading with a 2:7.8, which is still pretty slow, although that can be absolutely explained by their little clash with Spawn at first corner. here's our superstar Kusoni. I think his left, right, his out lap. Apparently it was his out lap. My bad. Oh no, it was a quick lap, a 2.6.2, just 0.3 away from his absolute best in practice session. This is now a stronger lap that we can see on the field, so guys are really bringing big guns out now, which is quite understandable as we are past the half point of the qualifying session. For Spawn and Bojaki haven't set a valid lap time, so I'm pretty interested to see what can they put up in the bit more than 3 minutes we have left. Spawn can actually afford to finish behind Olahar, not in the qualifying and neither in the race, because he's leading by just 3 points in the championship, so that gap is practically nothing. Looking at that, you can get an amount of 50 points per round who wants to finish behind his rivals, and of course Kusuni as well, if he wants any shot at the championship with just 2 races away from the end. So that's pretty clear, with Kusuni still grasping at that 2.6.2, but Olahar is just a bit more than 1/10 away. Oh, and just as I said, Kusuni set a 2.5.6, basically topping his practice best time. As always, he's really setting up a lesson for the other competitors. So far it's still only Spawn and Bojaki who haven't set a proper lap time. I'm saying that because Spawn has already set a 2.9. That's not to the competitive best, that's his best. That was including some mistake in his lap. Shortly we will be able to see whether he can improve his lap time. Approaching just the final chicane and the hairpin, and a little too much braking there. Let's see as he goes through the final hairpin what sort of lap our number 2 in the championship has put up. A 2.9.3. And Bojaki also set up a 2.6.6. Spawn really couldn't find the pace today. I see a lot of smoke coming from his tires in the larger braking zones. I don't know if he couldn't find a good balance on the braking. He's really taking the car to the edge of the track, using every single millimeter. He has only this one shot now to set a good lap time, but he's only set a 2.5.0. Oh my. Yeah, supposedly finished our qualifying session. Kusuni leads with his absolutely monster lap time. but at least two guys are still on track on their laps, so nothing's over yet. Jacques is slowly approaching the end of his lap. Let's see if he can maybe find that 3/10 to get the edge on 1 hour, or, well, he would need to find... Oh, he will not. He goes in the pits. Seems like the lap wasn't quite on par with what he expected. So our eyes on a spoon now. Let's see, he goes to the Coca-Cola hairpin, through the finish line with a 2.8.5, an improvement over his lap time, but still really not it, being 2 seconds away from P3, more than 3.5 seconds away from P1. So if you look at the qualifying results here, well, what could I say? And as it was in the last rounds now, Gasoni is absolutely flying. It's like he's sitting in a rocket ship, setting a time that is more than a second ahead from Alahar, who ditched P2, improving his lap time on his very last lap with a 2.6.1, putting a half-second lead against P3 Bujaki. And I'm pretty almost shocked with Spoon's lap time, because after all, he's P2 in our championship, and so far what I saw from him, this is a really interesting phenomenon, because as I said, he put a lap time that is 2 seconds slower than P3. He seemed like he really could not find the handling of this car, or rather how to put this car on the best use on this track. So overall, I would say by just looking at the qualifying results, you could consider that the field will essentially just break to pieces, as all of our competitors are on relatively different paces here. But based on my experience with this championship, qualifying is just one thing. Usually people can get false starts or mistakes in turn 1, and at a track like the Nürburgring GP, we all know what can happen at turn 1. So nothing is settled now, but as you can see, these are the results of our qualifying session here. So shortly we will be embarking on race 1. Just 1 minute on the counter. The red, so means we are seconds away from the lights. That's right. And it's lights out for the round 4 of the Sin R1 Cup here in Nürburgring GP. Sony already takes a pretty defensive line ahead of Lahar, who seems to have got a better start of the line in Kasuni. Cannot quite put it through for P1 in the start. And Spawn did overtake Bujaki for P4, there we go. Hopefully he can make up for his qualifying performance here on the track. Pretty clean start so far, with our drivers forming a little train here. But still, we have the whole 20 minutes, well, 19 minutes ahead of us. And Bujaki and Spawn are actually clashing it out for P3. So we can already see the first two guys getting a little bit farther from the last two people. So Monar can actually sort of decide now whether he wants to just grab as much slipstream as he can from P1 Kasumi, or whether he wants to go P1 real quickly and grab him on braking. Don't mind showing some braking zones. But the gaps are kind of even between our competitors now. Turn for the end of the first lap is Kasumi his lead, despite Olahar getting the edge on him on the start line. My name is Bujaki in P3 and Spawn in P4, so at the end of the first lap, so far nothing has changed. Especially qualifying, that's solidly oversteered there by Kasumi. And that's right, Spawn is right on his tail. The corner, that hairpin is able, for example, how we can do a proper like V-shaped apex to maximize your exit speed. It's very important because a fast full throttle zone comes after, so you can't afford to be slow out of it. It seems like Spawn is really struggling because he's 6 seconds away from the pack. He must have made some serious mistake. So far this race day isn't really any results for him. Now Olahar might want to do more in his rearview mirror than at Kasumi's tail, as Bujaki is slowly stealing distance behind him, getting closer and closer. And the distances between the first three are really fluctuating. Seems like in the first half of the track, Olahar might be the fastest out of these three guys, but on the second half, Kasumi always seems to build this gap back. So it will take some, let's say, heavy mistakes from either of these guys for the people behind them to get their position. So far everyone is sticking to their pace pretty confidently. Cassoni cannot really kick his feet up, as Polar is really keeping his car very well at 1 second. I mean, less than 1 second behind Cassoni. Really, this guy in P2 really wants to take that first win championship, and we're all here for that. What I saw so far in this race might be the smoothest sailing so far in the championship. These 3 guys in front are just trailing behind each other. I haven't seen any serious attacks so far. There's a little option by Bujaki. But apart from that, they're really just keeping to their own pace. As far ahead Cassoni was in qualifying, Polar can sort of keep up with him. Although Cassoni can be a bit more relaxed now because the gap is now steadily more than 1 second between him and P2. We are slowly approaching the halftime of our first race. These standings are still unchanged from the qualifying session. That might be the first time that happened during our Sinarvan Championship. Everyone is taking very smooth and steady so far. Starting to see how much Spawn has, how much the pack has got on his Spawn. I don't know if this car has any damage or if it's something else, but it's very unusual to see him 11 seconds away from the pack. It's usually, if you want to find him, you usually just need to take a look at the first 3 guys, but now he really cannot find his space to be up to the challenge to take on a podium finish. despite being so close at the beginning of the race, it seems like Tony could be school more or just find a faster pace now, because the gap is just growing and growing between him and P2. But it's the same case for Olear and Bajaki, having a gap of 2 seconds between them. The field is really just stretching away from each other. So now, actually, my little foresight at the qualifying might be becoming true, as the 4 guys here are having, really just driving it out at their own paces. As it stands, the only real shot at a position change could be Bajaki going for P2 if he can somehow find a better pace than Olear has now. So far, I haven't really seen any major mistakes from the top 3 here, so it is very interesting to see how smoothly things go. That could also be, of course, because there are no real fighting here. Everyone is doing their own hot lapping session now, pretty much. Even if we take a look at the best laps of each driver we won, it's by not large surprise Sunny having the best time so far in the race with a 2:5.3. But Olear could also post a time faster than a 2:06 with a 2:5.8. It seems like he had some more reserves in him after the qualifying session. Actually, in fact, the best race laps of each guy, apart from Kasuni, is better than the qualifying laps. And that also shows how very chill of a race we're having today. At least for the first race, that is, of course. Just 5 minutes to go. The standings are still unchanged from qualifying. Kasuni having P1, are following in P2 by a comfortable 3-second of gap. Behind him Bajaki, and Spohn just really far away from the top 3. He's constantly improving his lap times though, but definitely not fast enough to be forced to be reckoned with. can see are still, despite being almost 3.5 seconds away, still has excellent vision, which can be really bugging to see your opponent, especially in P1, getting just a tiny bit farther and farther every lap. So as we are approaching the final minute of the race, which could be 1 or maybe 2 laps at most, well, I'm shocked. This is almost like we were watching a multi-class race. Just no one can quite match the pace of the guy ahead, which is interesting to see after in the first 3 rounds of the championship. These guys were fighting tooth and nail for positions in the top 3. All four guys you see on track now are fierce competitors for all podium places so far in the championship. It's very interesting to see that this track is one that brings such different performances out of these 4 drivers. He's only absolutely sending it. The Schumacher asses in his final lap. He can really he could drive at 50% pace and he would still finish P1. All he needs to do is now bring it home if he wants to take the win. Just this full throttle right-hander, 1 chicane and a hairpin which stands between him and the race win. So it was pretty smooth sailing for Cassoni, who's now turning to the home straight for taking the win. First race of the Sin R1 Cup here in Nürburgring. Ohar being 5 seconds behind, but still a very confident P2 behind him. And we can also see Bajaki for the last straight taking P3. And let's not forget our 4th year today's chrono. I see some serious damage in his car that Oh, that explains the 34-second gap no reaches between him and P1. But he also takes the car home, scoring some valuable points for the championship. So, if we look at the results of race 1 here on Nürburgring GP, Ksenia took the win by, as always, a very confident drive, actually almost matching his best lap from qualifying. Alhar behind him in P2, scoring some very important points for taking the P2 in the championship as well from Spohn. Behind him, Bazaki in P3, and Spohn, quite shockingly, in P4 with an enormous gap. The only thing that can save him now is race 2 with the reverse grid. Maybe if the grid will be more closer and he needs to get use of his defense skills and not his attack skills on this track, he will be able to put a better performance. This is a really smooth sailing for all 4 drivers. We really just see 4 completely different performances in the first race. I really hope that the second race will somewhat mix up the competition, because this track has many amazing overtaking opportunities. So I would really much love to see the drivers getting use of those. So what you can see is, once again, the results of the first race in the penultimate round of the Sin R1 Cup. As we are waiting for race 2, which will start in a matter of minutes, I'm very curious to see whether our drivers, seeing the results of the first race, will maybe take more aggressive approaches for overtakes in the first lap. They would be absolutely entitled to, because as we could see, they could just build very confident gaps ahead of the people behind them. So despite having a few overtakes in the first lap, it wasn't quite enough from any of these guys to ditch a position which would have been better than their qualifying position. So here we will be able to see why and when the reverse grid format can work really well. Especially seeing the huge gap between Spohn and Cassoni in P1 and P4 in the first race. These guys will now start from the mirror opposite position, as it were. So it will be really interesting to see what they can put up in the second race. So we have seen the lights for race 2. Soon are going to come. And with lights out, we are off. Smooth start from everyone. So far, the one's been taking Lahar now again took a very good start. Already trying to take the position from Bojaki, who puts it on the inside Spoon, but with 3 wide into the second corner. And this is way more interesting than what we saw in the first race so far. People are getting quite mixed up in the first 3 corners. It's really everyone just wants to take a better position, as they all know they can just drive away from each other if they can get a decent gap and the other guys. Marvelous start. I have to mention that marvelous start by Spoon now. Despite his performance in the first race, excuse me, he's taken a very confident start for race 2. That's what we want to see from him. Wide, and Olahar already showing himself in the mirrors. Excellent, fortunately for an overtake in the chicane. If I saw it correctly, Olahar almost quite took the position straight. Bojaki came back in the braking, and actually Sony can also capitalize on that. This is a very closely trial and overtake from Olahar. A drag race between him and Sony for P3. Let's see who can turn in the better position. Olahar was quite pushing Sony to the side of the track and then to the defensive line, protecting that 3rd position. This little clash actually helped Spawn and Ivan a lot, because he's already built a 5-second gap of the 3 other guys. This is some lovely racing we see here, and I'm pretty sure that neither Olahar or Sony will leave any chance to get a better position. Olahar can feel the pressure behind him, and a little wide in the corner exit. Sony keeps the car behind him, doesn't quite do any fake attacks just yet. Keeps up that constant psychological pressure on Olahar for ditching that podium position from him. See maybe a bold move from Sony. The chicane or the last hairpin. It's more fun at the beginning of the race, but who knows? Maybe he could surprise Olahar with a bold move. And there we go. Dive on the inside in the hairpin, and Sony actually takes P3 from Olahar. I'm pretty sure that the guy in P4 will not just agree with that and later that this is, well, might have been a real bomb drafting, because Sony flashing his lights. Just warning Olahar not to try that once more. It seems like he can keep his P3, at least for now. Mahar is still behind him, well within half a second. And if Ksenia reaches Bajaki, that will open further opportunities for Olahar to catch up to the pack, so nothing is lost for Newland so far. His pony is really keeping that around 1.5 second-ish gap with Bajaki. It's like seeing a completely different guy driving that car in P1. But I do like to see that he finally found his pace after that not so good race 1. Ksenia is really just crawling up Bajaki's back, cutting that gap with them little by little. In each corner. He might be in the same position he was with Olahar, but there's not owner. Actually, try from the sides on the chicane, and it will be up towards the inside in the second corner. What a flash! Already goes and defends the inside line from Bajaki. Now, can't really get the time back, but we'll have the whole home straight and the slipstream of Ksenia. Look at that train of 3 people fighting it out for P2. Ksenia is really driving that car on the edge. It was a very bold braking zone, but he did well in keeping it together. Couldn't quite surprise. No, excuse me, that was Bajaki. Couldn't quite surprise Ksenia, who took P2 from him. He might want to go a little defensive because Olahar has smelled blood now. Is absolutely going for that 3rd position. Showing himself on the inside, threatening Bajaki with an attack, but quite close on the braking zone. Lucky got better exit out of the better ping, but not quite get the good position for an overtake yet. Bajaki. Olahar wants to finish in as a good position as he desires, then he might want to eat his up through Bajaki pretty fast, because Ksenia will, as we know, he will just get farther and farther every lap, so Olahar can't really afford to take too much time with this battle for P3, because his dreams of a P2 or even a P1 will just drift farther and farther every lap. Still cannot get the edge on Bajaki. He's putting up the real good defensive performance. Truly, these guys are dealing each other's gearboxes now. Just a matter of time, and Olahar will decide to send it in a little more in a brave way into a corner. Bajaki has an excellent chance to show off his defensive skills now. Olahar especially wants that 3rd position, because despite Spohn having a P4 in the first race, with taking a win and Olahar being a P4, Spohn would still retain his 2nd position in the championship, so even if not directly against each other, but we're seeing one kind of battle for P2 in the championship right now. Hart still can find the good spot to grab that third position. And let's also not ignore that Kusumi is still stealing distance to Spo, being only 0.8 seconds behind him now. So we're seeing simultaneous fights for P1 and P3. Ooh, Kasuni barely avoiding Spoon, very aggressive braking on turn 1. It's lovely to see in these corners how much people are abusing the track limits in a good sense. That's what you gotta do, especially if it's halftime in a race with just 8 minutes left and you want to get the first position. Sony will go that for the P1, snatching the grass there. That would have been quite dangerous. This is some chance. P2 Osborne very smartly goes to defend on the inside line, but that means that Sony can take the better line and final hairpin. And a better race, Spawn, despite trying to break the slipstream, Sony goes behind him to get closer and closer, and really went on the inside line, absolutely going all defensive. Sony is getting every chance now to get his hands on the first position, going to the inside line. The guy is going side by side since the beginning of this lap. Now it's all out. Just it seems like Kasuni has said enough of this. Finally going for the first position, trying to get on Spawn's nerves in every corner. What a beautiful switchback we saw from Kasuni. But still wasn't quite enough to take the first position. Spawn still righteously keeps it side. These guys were going side by side for almost the entire lap now. Got a beautiful dance between the two cars, switching all across the idle racing line, with Kasuni now taking P1 and can maybe get a little breather. But if I know Spawn well enough, he will not let this go by that easily. Ooh, what a battle we saw for P1 here. this wasn't just eye candy because it was a fight for the first position, but also because it brought the entire pack back together for the last 5 minutes of the race. We are seeing our 4 drivers together again. And no one, absolutely no one is letting go of attacking. It's only less than 5 minutes left. We are really in the time window now when if you see a chance, you go for it. There's no compromises, you just see a gap and go for it, because that might decide you having a better position in the final standings here. Jacques is keeping his cool extremely well in this race. Lahar is just trying to get his nerves as much as he can during the race, but still couldn't take P3 out of Jacques' hands. Let's not forget that Jacques now has been help of the slipstream from Spoon, so Lahar will have one bit harder of a job to take the 3rd position, and the clock is very much ticking for him. These 2 cars in P3 and P4 almost look like they're connected by some sort of wired together, as they both take each corner really as much on the edge as they can. Only a minute and 30 seconds left, which means that Lahar has, each corner has less and less chances for the podium position. Just cannot get that little edge for Jacques. Touching, the cars are almost touching, and Lahar did a bold move into the outside of the chicane. It didn't quite pay off. The clock is ticking down. I think this will be our final lap, which means it's now or never for Lahar. That attack in the chicane was a very bold move, and it seems a bit costly for Lahar because the gap between him and Bajaki is physically larger now. in the last lap, but who can really blame him for trying? If it's the final 2 laps, you stick your nose in anywhere you can. Rocky only needs to keep his cool now without committing any mistakes. Like all the defending for Bojaki has paid off. But let's first take a quick look at our race. Second race winner, Sony takes the win, Spohn being P2 with a much better performance than what he had in the first race. Bojaki taking P3 with some amazing defense skills ahead of Olahar, who could not get the podium position despite having basically a siege for that third position during the entire race. So if you look at our race results, whew, what a second race this has been. Sony took the win despite starting from P4, amazing skills by him. But for the second race, I think if we had a driver of the race award, I would give it to Spohn, because he really just got it together after that horrendous first race. His qualifying wasn't the best. His first race, he was really struggling, but he scored a very confident P2 here, scoring some major points for the championship. It was lovely to see. And which was also lovely to see was how Bojaki didn't fold under the enormous pressure he got from Olahar. He defended his podium position very well, so congratulations for all of our racers. Well, this is why we love a Euro's Grid, because the second race was night and day compared to the first one. As we are waiting for the championship standings to roll in, well, I think we can all agree that in the second race we got the better out of this racetrack. From Cassoni's surge from P4 to P1 to Bojaki's absolute cinema defending for the third position against Olahar. It was all lovely to see. It seems like the championship standings, the fresh championship standings are indeed in, with Kasuni stretching his lead even more, with having 177 points ahead of P2 Spawn. Well, the chance Spawn has for P1 in the championship now stays solely, I think, solely mathematical. He needs a miracle to happen in the last round to take that P1 from Kasuni, who all around this season so far put up, well, excellent 100% performances pretty much on all races. Not literally all races. We saw some interesting mistakes from him, false starts, and on Bathurst he really battled it out more with the walls than with the other cars. But still, taking as many wins as he could despite these little outtakes. He's leading our championship with 177 points. And behind him, Spawn and Olahar, and very interestingly, the gap between them stayed the 3 points just as it was before the fourth round. Spawn really got it together after the first race and defended his P2 in the championship against Olahar with securing that P2. And Bajaki also got considerably closer. Oh, in fact, it didn't. If I counted properly, so the gaps, actually, the gaps between P3 and 3 and P3 and 4 stay the same after round 4, which means that the battle for the championship positions, I think fairly, especially P3 and maybe P3 if Bojaki can get some major edge over Spoon and Lahar, will be decided in the very last round of the championship. Which, speaking of, will be at Zandvoort, well, where all the things started back when the Alpines were running the championship. We will be getting back on the famous Dutch racetrack on the 18th of December. And it'll be very interesting to see how this championship boils down, whether Olahar or maybe Bajaki will be able to secure that P2 in the championship, or maybe its chances are still not zero that we will see some interesting happenings in terms of the battle for P1 in the championship, because as I said, mathematically you can indeed get 50 points per round. That's 25 points per race with both wins. But with all fairness, the runner-ups would need our leader Kasuni to DNF in both races. So I will still be very much interested in whether Olahar or Spoon, for example, will get the P2, because they are so close in terms of performance, and as we could see, despite, even if they are far from each other in qualifying or in the first race, the second race mixes everything up. So between them, absolutely nothing is settled. So this is how we go for the fifth and last round of the Sin Urban Cup, which will once again be on the 18th of December at 7 p.m. as all our rounds have been so far. So now the only thing left is that I congratulate to all our racers today. I thank them very much for participating, and also watching. I thank you guys also for being with us. Don't forget, in 2 weeks we are having the final round of the championship. I'm very excited to see what will happen in Zandvoort, and I hope many of you will be there with me. So without further ado, be safe, stay well, and see you next time.